Hello, this is Mike from Twitter feed the UK today. Just making a small report in congratulations to Alison Dunn from Realpplsnews. It's a launch today, which is quite a good day to launch because it's the day of the Leveson report, which, as you probably will know, is a report into press standards, which over God knows how many decades has become worse and has got quite atrocious, especially since the case of Millie Dowler being the telephone being hacked has really created a problem for the press, who did really need. There needs to be an inquiry. I believe it's the 7th inquiry in 70 years as to how to control the press. I don't think the press really needs controlling. I think they just need to have some standards and some morals as to what they do. But now Mr. Murdoch has had his wrist slapped. He'll hopefully be a good boy for a while. As for government interfering in the press, that is 100% no. It can never be allowed to happen. Government is manipulative enough. It has the power of denotices. Certain people who can afford it can go to courts and get a super injunction and basic other injunctions. Then you've got people like Max Clifford, who you can go to with your story. He'll butter it up, spin doctor it, and try and make it out that you're not as bad as you were, or it's something completely different. There's a lot of ways people in power can cover their behinds. The likes of Millie Dowler's parents can't. They're small people like you and I, and the press can run roughshod over us because we don't have the finances and the wherewithal to protect ourselves, and in some cases even stop the stories appearing. So freedom of the press is really, really important. The other problem that we do have with the press is they do seem to be rather biased when push comes to shove with the government. There are certain newspapers who haven't, as far as we know, paid for stories that are like the Millie Dowler one, basically. They haven't paid for them, but I think newspapers do actually, well, they do pay for stories. They don't have tens of thousands of reporters that go out and seek stories. Most of the stories that end up in papers, a lot of them come through the wire, which is Reuters and Associated Press, which I believe are owned by a certain Rothschild family. So the news is filtered and bleached before it gets to the newspapers anyway, which obviously is wrong, but that's the way of the world at the moment, until some of these families are, how should we say, put to rest, got rid of. In the meantime, our press has another, they do actually bring the stories out, whether people have whistle-blown or someone has a good story and they phone the press up and give the press a story, in which case then they'll send a journalist out to cover the story. It might make a headline, but the problem there is once the headline's out, no one seems to be, in the press, no one seems to want to dig to the bottom of the story to find out what really happened, what went on. And that's where the alternative press is winning out, because people are prepared to dig here. There are people in the alternative press that have got a good enough name that you can email them or send them news that they are prepared to do a bit of research on and to publish it either via Twitter, YouTube, their blog. And until the press realise that they have got a duty of not just producing the headline that's tomorrow's chip paper, they also got a duty to report the story in more depth as to why this happened. I'm not really interested in newspapers anyway. I don't read them anymore. I stopped reading them about 4 or 5 years ago. It got pretty sickening when you looked every day. You got to put your petrol in the car or to buy your newspaper or to buy your cigarettes, and you look at the stand outside, and basically, apart from the red tops that have got some rubbish about someone exposing themselves to somebody else or some crazy sex life of some D-list celebrity, the rest of the newspapers seem to pretty much cover the same stories, and they just put their own spin on it, and that's usually as far as they go. The mainstream media, unfortunately, for those of us who keep up with the internet and alternative news, only report so much. They don't get to the bottom of what's happening. You've only got to take John Humphreys on the breakfast programme, whatever it's called, on BBC Radio 4, and then people like Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight, and they'll have a really pertinent question to ask someone maybe from government or someone they're interviewing, and we all know this is the question. Yes, he's got the question. Now just get the answer. And after 3 times of asking the same question, whoever the interviewee isn't going to answer it, so it's left. It's like it's not important. And that's like semi-reported. I mean, you hold your breath, you think, oh yeah, Paxman, oh, you've really got the right question there. Squirm out of this one. And they're allowed to squirm out of it. It's like the BBC and the mainstream media and the newspapers will only push so far, and when they're not going to get an answer, they leave it alone. Well, that isn't good enough press. So if the press aren't going to report stories fully, truthfully and in depth, I'm all for government intervention, because what they're reporting is hardly worth having. I just don't want a silly headline and nothing else. If newspapers are going to report accurately and properly, leave them alone. Don't let anyone get involved with them. Maybe have some sort of ombudsman that isn't government appointed, that isn't a party political ombudsman, to make sure that they report in a truthful manner, because there's nobody else except for the newspapers, the mainstream media, that is out there for the mainstream of people to report what's going on to them. And if they can't do it, the alternative press will take over and newspapers will end up going out of business. So I don't know how this is going to eventually pan out, but I think taking away the freedom of the press will be the final step to freedom and so-called democracy that we have in the UK and around the Western world. Anyway, congratulations on Real People's News, and to Alison, and I hope your channel goes really well. And this is Mike from the UK Today Twitter feed saying thank you very much and good luck, Real People's News. Bye bye.